everybody, it's Jo Perrott, founder of the Ladies Working Dog Group. Are you feeling stuck with your Gundog training? Trust me, you're not alone, and that's exactly why you need to be here. Every week, we're bringing you the best tips and hacks to make training your Gundog easy peasy. We'll keep it straightforward, no fuss, just actionable guidance that you can put straight to use. So let's get started. Hello and welcome to another episode of Found It, Fetched It. This week we're going to be talking all about the importance of being unapologetically you in Gundog training and in life. Joining me for this week's amazing podcast episode is LWDG mindset coach Emma Liddell. How are we today, Emma?
Really good, Jo. Really good.
It's been a few episodes since we've had you on the podcast. It feels like quite a while, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think it has been quite a while and a lot has happened. So it's really nice to be back.
It's lovely to have you back as well. We're going to talk about this because this is something I think we sort of see within the group where people are like, not always saying sorry, but they always feel like they personally should apologise for things that are out of their control, don't they?
Yeah, and it's really interesting because often when I look at posts, they start with an apology. And I find that really interesting, like, I don't mean to offend anyone, or I don't know if this is okay, or I hope this is all right to ask this here, or I hope I don't upset anyone. And even then, it's almost like the post has started even before they've said anything with an apology for asking a question.
I always find that curious as well, because within our group, we've worked incredibly hard, all of us, for many, many years to make it a completely safe space. There's no such thing as a stupid question. So even though they know they're in that space, they still show behavior from maybe other spaces where they feel, even from the first couple of words in a post, that they are going to be judged for whatever there is they're going to say.
Yeah, and I think I was thinking about this a little while ago when I was talking about the topic of this podcast, and I was thinking about why is it's more specific to females than it is males. If you look at men asking a question, let's say, for example, looking at a completely different forum, or even some of the other open forums to Gundogs as a whole, you'll find that men will ask a question. It's just quite a forthright question. Like, I just want your opinion on a really good quality coat or beating sticks or whatever it might be, or, you know, a training technique. Whereas with women, we have this feel that we need to apologise before we assert an opinion or ask a question. And for me, I think it's bigger than that, because when we look at society and we look at our background and the journey that we've come on as women about being able to express opinions, vote, all of those other things, it's almost like we have this historic legacy where we have to apologise for taking up space in this world, which I think is a really big thing when we think about it. It's almost like, oh, I feel like I'm intrusive if I give my opinion, or I'm intrusive if I ask a question, or I'm intrusive if I ask for a need to be met, even because we are taught that we are the one that gives, we are the one that meet others' needs. And historically, we didn't have a big space in society. We would have seen but not heard, kind of like children. So I still think that's a legacy, even though that's generations and generations ago. And luckily, we've come a long journey through that. Even if we think about our role in our lives as mothers or partners or whatever else, where our needs are put to the back, it's almost like we apologise for taking up room, even in a community of other women where we want women to take up room.
I do find it baffling because the Gundog world, without a doubt, is still very much male-dominated. There are far more women involved than were when I started like 8 years ago, 9 years ago. But it is still a minority of people there in that space, isn't it?
Yeah, and I would say so. You know, I beat on 2 local shoots. I would say one of those shoots is maybe 50-50 men, women that work, dogs, beat or pick up. Certainly the other shoot, which is a much larger shoot, is predominantly men out beating, predominantly men out working their dogs, predominantly men out picking up. And I think I'm probably one of only 3 women that actually work a dog on that shoot. So
what do we mean when we say being unapologetically ourselves?
I think it's about letting go of that inhibition that I have a right, almost, which sounds quite assertive. And a lot of women are probably hearing this like, oh, I have a right to something. I have a right to talk about myself, to talk about my needs, to ask questions. I have a right to ask for my needs to be met. I'm not going to guarantee they're going to be met, but I have a right to ask. I have a right to have a voice. I have a right to have an opinion that is as valid as other people's opinions. And I think sometimes that's even hard in a world where if we're training our dogs, but we're not a formal gun dog trainer, that's not our job, but we still go out and train our dogs a lot of the time. Is my opinion as valid as that as a trainer? Is my opinion as valid as someone else's opinion? And you'll find it in groups of women where we'll have a group of us talking and then we spend all our time almost half interrupting each other. Go, oh no, you go first. Oh no, you. Oh no. Oh, I'm sorry. Like, oh, have I been rude? And it's like, just stop. Like, all our opinions are valid. We'll go around the room one at a time. Don't worry. But we are so concerned that our voice might upset or impact on somebody that sometimes we don't even listen to that voice in ourselves. It's almost like I'm not willing to even let myself hear the voice about what I need because I'm worried that I'm going to upset myself, let alone anyone else.
What do you think is going on in our minds when we do it?
I think it's fear. I think fundamentally it's fear of not being liked. It's fear of rejection. And I know it's fear of being seen as, and I think this is a really interesting discussion that I had with someone only recently. It's this fear of being seen as emotional, especially if it's about our needs being met, because often when women assert themselves, they're seen as emotional or needy. They get labelled, and it's quite interesting because a man will get seen as assertive, and a man will get seen as knowing what he wants, and a man will be seen as kind of forthright, whereas women will be seen as feisty. Women, it's always generally in quite a negative light. They'll be seen as a ball buster. They'll be seen as too much, too needy, too demanding. And it's like, or they're just asserting themselves. And so when we have this comparison often between men and women, I'm not here to say that men are bad or wrong in any way, shape or form, but men are often congratulated for being strong and direct. Women are seen as threatening when they're strong and direct. And it's not seen as an attractive quality. Often we're taught to be quite submissive and we want to make sure everyone's okay and nurturing. And it's genetically in our structure. It becomes harder for us to have that voice. And we don't necessarily get praised growing up having that voice. We get praised for being nice and for sharing and not complaining and tolerating and giving. And those are, I'm not saying we shouldn't be praised for those. Those are all admirable qualities. But we should also be praised for setting boundaries and saying no and for being assertive and asking for what we need. And that doesn't get as fostered in women, I don't think, growing up as it does in men.
I totally agree with you. And it's something that you just said, maybe think was something that, like, literally I've just written and posted on the LWDG business page, which is, it's coming up to a year now since my book went out, and I was like, my God, where has a year gone? So much has happened. And as I was sitting and thinking about what I wanted to write, I was remembering how much I was fearing, like, being judged or being compared to other people, and like, who is she to write about this topic? What gives her the right to do this? All those things. And I can remember them being incredibly powerful thoughts back in the time, and they were very much holding me back. And to a point where just before the book came out, I really thought twice about whether I was even going to publish it, because I was like, oh my God, what will people think of me? But why is it that you think, so why is fear something like is so powerful, like, and how do we quieten it down? Because I was lucky, I had you guys, I had you, my husband, other experts going, we've read it, put it out, it's fabulous, do it. But if I hadn't had that, I don't know if I would have gone through with it. I really don't. So how do we quieten this voice inside?
And the first question, I will come back to that point in a minute. The first question that I'd be challenging with you, when people go, who is she to do this? Who is she not to? Who is she not to do that? We always have to feel like we have to earn the right to do something rather than why shouldn't I be doing it? And as women, we always go like, why should I ask for more time? Why should I ask this question? Like, why should I not? Prove me wrong. Tell me that I shouldn't, rather than ask me for permission if I should. And that would always be my challenge. And you've probably had that from me quite a few times, Jo. Like, who are you not to? Like, if you've got the experience and you've got the knowledge and you've got the passion, why would you not? So that's for me a really good question. And it's a really nice way of women being able to reframe it instead of going like, should I? Why shouldn't I? Why shouldn't I go out and work my dog on a sheet? Why shouldn't I apply for a shotgun certificate? Why shouldn't I wear the tweed that I'm scared of wearing because I think everyone's going to laugh at me? Like, why shouldn't I do the thing that I wanted? Why shouldn't I enter a field trial if I think I can do that, or a scurry for the first time? Like, who am I not to? And then the second bit is going back to that fear that's that massive blocker. And fear is a survival mechanism. So it's really hard to override it, because fundamentally, if we drill down what fear is a fear of us being physically harmed or dying. Now, we know that most of the fear we experience now is psychological. It's very unlikely we're going to die as a result of asking a question. But the feeling and the core belief under that and what gets activated physically in our body is the same. Our body cannot tell the difference between physical threat and psychological threat. So if I fear that by asking the silly question that we say, and there's no such thing as a stupid question, but I'm still scared of asking it, my fear response in my body is going to be the same as that fight or flight, as in I could be physically harmed or die as a result of it. Now, to override that is super tough. Like, we can do it, absolutely, we can do it, but it's really, really hard. And so what happens is we don't do the thing, because it activates that part of the body. Our body naturally wants to keep us safe. The best way of keeping us safe is by keeping us small. And so if we're small, no one's going to recognize us. If we're small, we're not going to be a threat to anybody. If we're small, we're not going to be hurt. So great, I understand that being small is safe, but being small gets us nowhere in life. Being small doesn't allow us to grow. It doesn't allow us to stretch our wings. It doesn't allow us to experiment. It doesn't allow us to live. And there's a massive difference between living and keeping ourselves safe. And the bit that I really want to encourage in women is for us to stop keeping ourselves small. We do ourselves no favors by keeping ourselves small. We aren't true to ourselves. We don't follow what really works in here. And we aren't helpful to our communities. We aren't helpful to the women that come after us. So if there's one big message to take away, it's don't keep yourself small. It's not going to be helpful for anyone. We think it is, but it isn't.
Do you think as well, like we talk loads about how mindset affects our dogs, affects our training. Is this another way we are maybe inadvertently affecting our training?
Yeah, absolutely. We know that there is, we talk about the connection down the lead, that the lead becomes a conduit for our emotions. If you think about how sensitive dogs' noses are and what we can train our dogs to sniff, we can train dogs to sniff out if someone's about to have an epileptic fit or diabetic, go into a hypo, and they can smell that in us. Why on earth would they not be able to smell fear? We know they can smell it in each other. They can smell hormonal changes. They can smell emotional changes in us. Most of us know that when we're upset, our dogs aren't okay with that. They get very confused. They don't know what's going on. Some dogs become very needy. I know if I'm upset, certainly one of my dogs will come and sit on my lap and try and lick away my tears because he doesn't understand what's happening to me. I had an operation only a month ago, and it was really interesting to see my dog's reactions to that level of vulnerability. They could tell something wasn't right with me. They could tell I wasn't okay. And 2 of the 3 dogs actually you could visibly see a change in their behaviour. I wouldn't say they were distressed, but they were very unsettled. The older one didn't care. He was kind of like, I've got a sofa or I'm all good. So absolutely, if you think about it, if you think about when you're not okay, how your dogs react, why would this idea of this fear of us not fulfilling who we really should be or being true to ourselves, why would that not affect the training that we have with our dogs?
What you just said there is so true, isn't it? It's the fact that, like, while we are being small and while we are being scared, we are making our dog possibly be affected in a way that they don't behave as we want them to. And that then just feeds into this concept that we've got, that we should be fearful of this and we shouldn't be there. We really do, that the fear is real, if that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you think about it from this perspective, and we talk about behavioural issues in dogs, and obviously we're not here to diagnose or provide advice, you need to go and see a specialist behaviour trainer. But if your dog doesn't think you've got their back, that's going to be a problem for the dog. We know that. Fundamentally, you don't have to be a qualified behaviourist to understand that. that if my dog doesn't know I'm going to step in and I'm going to advocate for it, my dog's behavior is going to be different. My dogs trust me that I'm going to be there for them, that if something happens to them, I'm going to look after them and I'm going to step in and I'm going to deal with that. And that's the key start of the bond between us and our dogs. My dog knows I'm there for them. And therefore that dog's like, okay, cool, I can work with you now because you've got me. We're okay with this. So that fundamental first bond is so, so key.
So how do we practically calm our minds? Because they can be chaotic, they can be crazy, they can be 100 mile an hour, and it can be very hard to allow space for logic or reasoning in this like emotive craziness that we've got going on. And something that is used to beat us a little bit as women, you know, or you're emotional, you can't control yourself. How do we calm our minds so that we can access our own logic?
I think everyone's going to calm their mind slightly differently, which is great. Most of us don't believe we can do it. Most of us don't trust that we can actually calm our mind. Most of us are being told we can't calm our mind because we're hormonal. Or if we're not hormonal because we've got periods, it's hormonal because we're menopausal, or it's because we're women, or we're highly emotional, or we're highly strung. And I really want to move away from the negativity that we have around that, because actually what I'm hearing when people say that is you have the courage to feel. That's not a bad thing. And that's not a thing to be ashamed of. Like, you have the courage to feel. And actually, if we had more people that had the courage to feel, the world would be a much nicer place. It's when we don't acknowledge our feelings, that's when real serious problems happen. So we need to move away from this idea of being emotional as a bad thing. Emotions are our body telling us something. All it is information for our body. So if I'm feeling really excited or happy, and I've got this bubbling in my stomach because I'm like, oh, I'm really excited. My body's telling me this is good. Do more of this. This makes you happy. This makes you fulfilled. If I'm feeling anxious, or I'm feeling sad, or I'm feeling fearful, I need to know why. I'm not saying, often what happens is we go, I don't like this feeling, so I need to stop it. I need to stop the feeling as quickly as possible. Whereas actually it's an option for growth for a lot of us, of like, okay, I'm feeling this fear. Why? Because it's something that I don't know if I can do. Okay, cool, but I can still try that then. And the bit that I would say is women don't trust ourselves. Fundamentally, we don't trust ourselves. We don't trust that it's not our hormones or our emotions or whatever else. But we know what's best for us. We genuinely do. And most people are sitting there going like, Emma, I don't know what's best for me. And I'm like, but you do. And the analogy that I use with most of the clients I work with is, you know what food you like and you don't like, right? So for example, for me, I cannot stand olives. Olives for me are proof the devil walks the earth, because those are the droppings he leaves behind. Like, I hate them. And every year I'm like, oh, maybe my taste will change. And I try one and I'm like, why would you put yourself through this? Whereas there'll be people listening to this podcast going, oh my God, I love olives. Olives are great. And I know instinctively people go, why don't you like olives? I just don't. I can't describe why. I just don't like them. Where there's going to be other bits of food where I love them and the other person's like, that's disgusting. Like mushrooms are quite for a lot of people, it's a divider. Some people love mushrooms, some people don't love mushrooms. And so if you can trust, you know what you like to eat and what you don't like to eat, you intrinsically know what your body likes and doesn't like. We can make that bigger and bigger about things, about choices, about, I don't know, it's same with movies. I didn't like that movie. We don't judge someone else for liking it and us not liking it. Same for music. I don't like that artist, but you do. It doesn't make anyone bad or wrong for liking whatever they like. So you intrinsically, deep down, if you know what movies you like or don't like, and you know what music you don't like and you like, and food you like and don't like, you do know what's best for you. It's just you've never tapped in and you've never actually listened to yourself. You've never had that pause where someone's gone, do you want to do this? And what you've done is your response has been pressured of, what do I think I should do? Like, am I going to make that person happy if I do it? Not, do I want to do it? And if you take that extra 5 seconds and you almost do like the olive test, as I do, and go like, if I do it, do I actually want to do this? And I listen to my body, and part of my body goes, yeah, you really want to do this. I'm like, yeah, cool, let's do it. Or like, oh no, I don't want to do this. Then actually I know what's best for me. And what's really hard about it is we don't listen to what's best for us because we're worried about upsetting other people, which is okay to some degree, but when it holds us back, it doesn't serve us. And also, we have this idea we don't want to upset people, but also we don't want to be different to people. So if I go and do the thing which I know a lot of other people don't do, are people going to judge me for it? And my second question is, if they're judging you for it, are they the people that care? Does it matter? Now, the fact that most of us are sitting listening to this podcast, we already do something that's unusual to the general population. We like dogs a lot in a whole different way to the other people that like their fur babies. We like our dogs. We probably like the countryside to some degree, whether we go out and shoot or whether we don't, but we like being out in the countryside. We like the idea of Gundog training. So we're already a little bit odd to the world. Fantastic. We need more odd people. We need more diversity. We know, even in a company, the more diverse the demographic in the company, the more successful the company is. So being weird is wonderful. Like, I'm encouraging of that. And the bit that I find most interesting is the people that truly embrace who they are, the weird, the wonderful, the wacky, the crazy stuff that other people go like, oh my God, we're attracted to that. We like different. We're interested in that. If someone is different to us, we're like, tell me about this. This is interesting. The more I have acknowledged that I am different in my weird, wacky, crazy way with the stuff that I enjoy or do or don't do, and that I am fully accepting of that. I'm not apologising for like, oh, it's a bit weird that I take my dog mantrailing, or it's a bit weird that I like shooting, or it's a bit that I'm like, yeah, this is who I am and I really like it. The more people go, that's really cool, tell me more. And so the more we are authentically true to ourselves, the happier we are, the less discord we feel in our body. We know that women have a much higher rate of autoimmune diseases than men. And my firm belief around that, amongst other physical conditions, is because we have to hold everything in, and it comes out in some way because we are not being true to ourselves. So it manifests in a whole number of physical conditions. And actually, we can alleviate some of those when we alleviate, and it's not a guarantee, but we can alleviate some of that reaction in our body because we're holding so much stuff. Is actually the right people are attracted to us because we are just being ourselves.
It's fascinating we're talking about this because for the last year, as you know, I've had a business coach, and she's been helping me with loads, and just as you have, with my feelings around my place within the LWDG, because for a long time I built it with this sort of huge, massive enthusiasm for it. I had no idea where it was going to go or that it was going to turn into a business. And as it grew, I sort of got a little bit worse even than I did with my book of who am I? What am I? Am I an expert like my trainers? I see my trainers as experts, and they are. I see you as an expert because you absolutely, without doubt, are. And I was like, who am I? And it really, I don't know whether it aligned with hormonal changes and everything else, but it, without a doubt, massively physically disrupted my system because I started to feel quite like I should shrink from my own group, shrink from my own business. And from the outside, these are not things that people...
Being small again, being small.
Yeah, this whole like taking inside, feeling guilty, the business was profitable, and all these types of things. You think about them and you think, where did I learn that behavior? Now, if I look back, my parents, without a doubt, would never, ever wanted to have given me those challenges. But I grew up in a household where it was still quite stereotypical, although my mum, I will give her this absolutely, my dad would try to play a stereotypical role, and my mum would say, not a expletive chance, that ain't working with me. And I grew up as well in the South Wales Valleys, still is, even today, I think, a little bit stereotypical, how a woman behaves, how a man behaves. And when I look at how I felt over the last year, a lot of that has got to do with how I perceive myself as a woman running a powerful business where she stands for something. And if we look at our dogs, it's very much the same. When you walk out on the field with a Gundog, you are, to a certain extent, on a stage where you are showing that you and your dog stand for something.
Yeah. And I think there's two bits there. The first thing is, I absolutely know your role in the LWDG. You're the conductor. You're the conductor of the orchestra. That's your role. And you do your job very well. So I think sometimes we have this idea that we have to be an expert rather than a conduit. And even as a therapist, my job is not to fix the problem for a client. My job is to be the conduit. And that's probably like one of the best roles, because you're empowering other people. You don't have to do the work yourself. You're just empowering the other people to do it. So that's absolutely your role. If I look back, again, my experience growing up, you know, I didn't grow up in the valleys, I didn't grow up in Wales. I grew up in a town, almost a small city. But my experience, again, very similar. I had very good, very stable parents, but there were times where their upbringing affected my upbringing. And I have a really good relationship. I'm very blessed that I have a good relationship with both of my parents. And I have an ongoing joke with my dad, because when I told my dad I wanted to be a therapist, my dad's response to it was, and he'll cringe when I say this, but he knows it's true. And he has, don't get me wrong, he's apologised for this later on in life. He said, oh, that would be really useful for when you get married and have kids. Because his perception of it was that it will be a useful thing that I can fit in around my life, because I would get married and have children, because that's what you do. And the fact that I've created 2 thriving businesses of it, and I do all these other things, and I have a very, very independent life, absolutely did not fit the mold. Now, my parents are very accepting of that mold. But again, I remind him that that was the angle that he looked at me as a woman, is that the accepted narrative would be that I would get married and I would have children, and that I'd probably be the stay-at-home mum, and I could fit in a little bit of counselling to help make some extra money for the income, because the assumption is that the man would provide the majority of the income. So even though our parents can be absolutely wonderful, fantastic people, like mine are, it can impact on us. And as a child, I was a very helpful child. I always got really good reports at school. Like, Emma's very helpful. She wants to help the other children, because I got praised for it. I got praised for being helpful. I got praised for being nice. I got praised for being generous. I got praised for all those things, which, again, as I said before, is a lovely thing to do in your children. But I didn't get praised for having a voice. I didn't get praised for standing my ground. I didn't get praised for having an opinion. And I was a very forthright child, as you can probably tell. My parents probably didn't have the easiest time with me at times like that. But as women, we don't get praised for being big. We get praised for being small and for being nice. And sometimes in this world, we don't need to be nice. We can be kind and we can be appropriate. We can be dignified. We don't have to be horrible. But this idea of being nice keeps us small.
Do you find as well, like when I look on social media and I follow some female huntresses, they self-labeled as that. They go out and they shoot and they hunt and, you know, they put food in the freezer. And for me as a woman, I am inspired by that. But sometimes I sit and, you know, you do the doom scroll and you read comments, and there's almost this other side where some women and some men, it's not just men, it's men and women, are threatened by the role of the powerful woman. And then I think about it and I think, hold on, there are so many heads, shall we say, like if we look at Greek mythology and we see Diana, you know, she's a god of the hunt, she's female, you know, and I think, where did we lose the concept of a woman being strong and providing and secure and protector? Because, you know, in nature we see our dogs, when they've got a litter, they'll protect their litter to the death. They really don't care who gets between them, you and their pups. They are going to come for them. And then you see this sort of, I don't know, I don't want to like go into history because I'm not knowledgeable enough, but it's almost like this Victorian little woman sit at home in there. Like, that's a tiny bit of our history, yet we've sort of latched onto it.
And when we look at it in the animal kingdom, the majority of the animal kingdom, it is the woman that goes out and hunts. If we look at lionesses, they're the ones that go and coordinate the hunt. They're the ones that do a lot of those things. Even if we look at the world of birds of prey, in the majority of birds of prey, the female is a third larger. She is certainly stronger. When a lot of birds of prey, they mate for life, or until the female kills the male. So in the natural world, actually, women are seen as stronger. We know even genetically, we can withstand pain better. We give birth. Like, we can see experiments on men, and when they've stimulated men in the same way of giving birth, and men can't cope with it. I'm not saying every man, I'm not saying that men are weak. We need to generalize to everybody. But what's happened is, again, if we look at society, you know, if we look at these things, like we weren't allowed to own property, the reason our surname changes when we get married is because we pass from possession to our father to our partner. It's a very archaic way of looking at things now. So if I got married, my surname would change if I chose to, and it's great that we have the choice to now, because some of us want to change our surname, some of us don't. Is literally the only reason that would happen is because I was my father's property, so I had his surname, to being my husband's property, so I have his surname. That's bizarre when we think about it now. And I'm not saying we will have to change our names back, because it's nice to have a family with the same surname, and it's got to be what you feel comfortable with. But we have lived in a world, and there are cultures out there where that isn't the case, where the woman absolutely is the stronger party. The woman picks their husband, whereas we tend to wait for men to propose to us or choose us. Other societies, it's exactly the opposite. The woman's like, no, I think you'll do. And the guy's like, oh, okay, that's cool. But we have lived in a westernized society, generally more, for many years, we have been seen as weaker. Because physically, generally, we cannot overpower a man. Obviously, there's always exceptions to every rule, but because we have been seen as a physically weaker sex, generally, which we tend to be, we then get seen as just weaker generally. Psychologically, we tend to get seen as weaker. And that's certainly not the case. Not in any way, shape or form. When a woman is strong, that's a formidable force. And that, for the right person, just as you said, becomes inspiring. But for the wrong person, it's threatening. Because if a woman is secure in themselves, or a man is secure in themselves, and they look at a woman that's strong, we're like, that's amazing. Because there's no threat to us. If we're insecure as a man or a woman, and we see another empowered man or a woman, we want to drag them down because we feel insecure. It's uncomfortable for us to look at because it shows a gap in ourselves.
And this isn't like about man bashing whatsoever. It's about us as women standing into our power, isn't it? It's not like taking it back. We've always had it. We've just chosen internally in ourselves not to step into it.
Absolutely. This is not about man bashing in any way, shape or form. And it's also about understanding that our power is different. Our power is different to a masculine power. And we all have a blend of masculine and feminine in us, and that's cool and that's fine. We don't have to act like men to be powerful. We can embrace being a woman, and that can be a really powerful thing. And that's what makes men and women fantastic in many ways, because men can be powerful in their way that works for them, and we can be powerful in our way that works for us. And they are different. Very, very different. And there's often a blend. I'm not saying there has to be black. Nothing is black and white. We all have a blend of the two. But it's about this idea. And I saw this very much. If you look in the 90s, there was this kind of ladette era that you see where women were kind of wanting to act like men. And I was like, why can't we just be powerful in what we have and what feels right for us? For some of that might be some more traditionally masculine activities. Like for a lot of us, we shoot. We engage in sports that are more masculine, such as Gundog training. That doesn't make us any less of a woman. It's just making it an equal experience in our own way. And I think that's what's important. When we are coming into our own power, it's not about pushing the other person down. It's about rising to the same level. And I think that's sometimes where we get it wrong. We think if women are rising up and we are being empowered in who we want to be, somehow we're pushing other women down or we're pushing men down. And we should never be doing that. But if we're doing that, we've got it wrong. It's about all of us coming into our power.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. It's an incredibly personal and internal journey that we all need to go on, I think. Because I think that even if you don't think you need to go on it, at some point, male or female, at some point you will step into something in your life will trigger you to step into working out who you are and what you stand for and what you want life to look like going forward. And I think that's where you sort of find strength in vulnerability. You've worked with so many different people across the board. Where do you think, or what do you think is normally the trigger to find this strength in that vulnerability?
Pain. It's when we hit whatever our rock bottom is, when we're really challenged with something and we have to go, I don't have any tools in the box for this, or I don't know how to get out of this, or my coping strategy is not working anymore. I'm going to have to dig deep and find something different. And so through that level of adversity or loss or pain or suffering, whatever that might be, loss of a job, loss of a loved one, breakdown of a relationship, a bereavement, that's when there's a catalyst for change. And it's really interesting. And again, there might be some men listening to this episode, and I think it's really key to understand that both of us have struggles. So for women, one of the things that I'm really keen on women feeling safe experiencing is anger. And that's really important. And for men, it's about having sorrow or pain or loss, because men aren't allowed to be emotional and women aren't allowed to be angry. And so we still have different challenges. So it's not saying that women have it worse than men, it's just a different challenge. It's just a very, very different challenge. Like, we're not allowed to be seen as angry. Anger is dangerous for men, but it's ugly for women. So if a man gets angry, bad things can happen. You know, countries get invaded, like really bad stuff happens. They can hurt people physically, they can kill people. Less likely with a woman, but with women, it's a really ugly emotion. Women aren't allowed to be angry. So we often have different experiences with the same level of emotions about how society views them. But it is through that severe challenge, whatever gets thrown into our lap, that can often be the catalyst for the biggest growth. And it's a shame that we have to have that, but we probably wouldn't grow, because it's what pushes us outside of our comfort zone. It's the bit where we go, I don't have the coping strategies for this, whether it's with our dogs and we're like, I just don't know where to go with this. I'm all out. I've read every book. I've like, help, let me find a new way. Let me think about this in a new direction. Or whether it's us personally, because we thought our career was going somewhere and suddenly we're made redundant. Or we thought we were, I don't know, never going to have children. We find ourselves pregnant. Earlier into a relationship, we think this has thrown me for a spin, or a relationship ends and we didn't expect it to happen, or we go through a bereavement. It's those times where, I'm not saying it's great we go through them because they're big and challenging, but that's where we grow the most.
Do you find as well, though, and this is sort of like a curious occurrence, shall we say, Gundog training has very traditional roots in itself and its own history that probably aligns in time and space to our history as women in the Western world. And when we go out and we train our dogs, we are sometimes, and this is not, again, it's not all men and it's not all trainers, but we are encouraged by a lot of male trainers and a lot of female trainers who train the traditional way to get after the dog, show our anger to the dog, and then our anger, which is not really appreciated anywhere else, is almost encouraged when it comes to dominating the dog.
And it's really interesting to see how many women struggle with that, because it's like, I'm sorry, what? Like, I don't understand, I don't know. And so when you get, you know, I've seen it with female dog trainers. I've been at events, or I've been at away weekend, and the trainer will be like, tell the dog no. And the woman's like, no, don't do that. And they're like, no, tell the dog no, enough. And for a woman to do it, it's like, oh, well, can I do that? Like, yes. Yeah, it's okay to do that. It's okay to be firm. It's okay to, and it's almost like I'm like, it's okay to have a voice. And that might be the first time that we're really encouraging women to have a voice and to be able to set a boundary and go, that is not acceptable. And I think this is sometimes where we often see it, people struggle with that with dog training, because they're like, oh, I don't want to upset the dog. And I'm like, saying no to the dog is not going to upset the dog. Yes, hitting the dog or distressing the dog, it's gonna upset the dog. But saying no is not. That's setting a boundary. But we've never been allowed to have that voice before. We've never been able to go, oi, what are you doing? Get back here. Because, oh, that's ugly. Oh, that's an ugly thing for a woman to say. That's not very ladylike, is it? No, but it gets the job done. And who's to say what's ladylike and who's not?
It's quite funny you say that, because I can always remember, as we finish up this podcast, my gran, who's still alive, bless her, she's in her 90s. We were somewhere, we must have been like, it was like a wedding or something like that. And people were drinking, and there was a table and a lady drinking out of a pint. And she just sort of leaned over to me and she went, Joanne, a lady never drinks a pint. And I was like, giggling. It wasn't like I would have drunk a pint anyway. I would have probably had a half pint Coke. But it has, again, it's stuck with me. And sometimes I find myself doing it. Like, I won't ask for a large soft drink. I'll always ask for the smaller soft drink, probably knowing I'm going to need two of them, so that I've got this like little glass. And then I laugh at myself, because I'm like, what are you doing, you lunatic? But it's like that voice inside me saying, this is what a lady looks like.
And I think we need to redefine that, because in the nicest way, Jo, if you're thirsty, you get a big glass. Like, what, ladies aren't allowed to be thirsty? How ridiculous is that? Sometimes I'm blooming thirsty and I'm going to want to have a pint of something to drink. And it's like, oh no, but that scene is a little bit unseemly and unsightly. No, it's not. It's just fun. Like, fundamentally, that's a human need. I'm thirsty. And if I'm unwilling to even allow myself to have that human need because I'm worried that someone might think I'm unladylike, whoa, that's a lot of work to be done. You know, that's not right. And again, it's that idea of making ourselves small. And what's really interesting, it was only a couple of weeks ago that I posted on the Ladies Working Dog group about my dog being still to a flush of a hair. And if you listen to that video, I'm like, no, like, it's a really loud, and I'm like, if you know, you know. And there's loads of people that have posted and laughed about it. And I sent that message to a couple of male friends that I know that work dogs. And most of the responses I got back from them was, I'd stay still as well. And it was like, yeah, do you know what? Because that voice was like, no, mate, there is no moving on this one. And it's okay to have that voice as long as you're not upsetting anyone and you're not hurting anyone. And that's our fear. It's okay to have a voice. And again, it goes back to that, whether it's the small soft drink, whether it's the small voice, we need to stop being small. Being small does not serve anyone, especially ourselves. And if we are not living true to ourselves, fundamentally, we're living an unfulfilled life, and that's not going to make anyone happy. And if we're not happy, we're not going to make people around us happy. So the first point it has to start with is us.
I've absolutely loved this podcast, Emma Liddell, as always. I think there's people now probably getting out of their car who are going to be firm with their futures, and I think that's absolutely a lovely thing to do. This chat has given me quite a lot to think about, whether it's Gundog training or life, or just how we like show up for ourselves and the ones we love. Like the roles we play will, without doubt, from the conversation we've had, affect the generation coming behind us, won't it?
Absolutely. And I think we owe it to ourselves, and we owe it to those that come after us, whether they're our biological children, the women we come into contact with, our nieces, our godkids, the one that we're the crazy auntie to, it doesn't matter. If we show them that it's okay not to be small and it's okay to have a voice, imagine what the generations after us are going to achieve.
Yeah, a massive thank you to you for sharing like your wisdom on this and making it feel like relatable and doable to be our own versions of strong. I want to ask you before you go, what do you think are the steps? Because a lot of people don't want to go from like where they are now to like where they perceive they should be, but they're not ready to get there yet. How do we just make small changes that allows us to start building this confidence?
It's exactly like that moment you just said, Jo, when you're really thirsty and your brain is like, don't order the big drink, get the big drink. And no one else will notice. No one else will be bothered. But for you, it will be that first step to going, my needs matter, my voice matters. And actually, I can do those things. And it's amazing once you do that and just noticing when you're about to make a decision, like, am I holding myself back from this? Is it fear? Is it fear of being rejected or not liked or whatever else? Because the people that may be fearful of you or that may reject you or may not like you, they're people you don't want around you anyway. The people that try and comment on your life and try and bring you down, those are voices you don't want to hear. It's the people that go, oh my God, you did that thing and that's awesome. Like, I'm so, like, that's great you did that. Like, I'm so chuffed for you. Those are the people you want to hear anyway. So just do the little things. It's a bit ironic I'm saying this. Do the little things that stop you being small.
Absolutely. And if you are one of our members, please listen to what Emma says. Listen, whoever you are. But if you're one of our members, please listen to Emma. And no, you do not need to start any post within our group with an apology. There is nothing to apologize for. We want to hear your thoughts, your failures, your successes, your chaos. We wanted to see it all because we're there to support you with it all. Before our listeners go, we want to make sure that everybody's aware of what's coming on the 1st of December. We've got something really exciting lined up, and that is our 21-day Canine Christmas countdown. If you haven't seen the sort of promotional stuff of it yet, you sure will, and it's going to be for everyone. when I say everyone, all the ladies in our open community, ladies, leads and laughter, and also in our society membership. Sorry, gentlemen, we are using this in our ladies only areas. However, I am sure without a doubt that you can ask a mum, a friend, a niece, someone to sign up into the group so that you can see the next 21 days where we will be posting training activities, Christmas related, into those groups. It's going to be fab. If you are a member, you are going to get extra perks. There's going to be a £300 cash giveaway, so it's going to be absolutely amazing. It's all fun. It's keeping you going, keeping you and your dog enjoying training and adding a little bit of a festive sparkle to it. It is going to kick off on the 1st of December and end on the 21st, so please make sure you head over to those groups, ladies or gentlemen, using one of the ladies' friends to get in. I didn't say that out loud, but yeah, you know what I mean. Come in there and just find out all about those and enjoy those 21 days of exercises. The experts have worked incredibly hard on putting together some really funny, fabulous stuff for you to have a go at. As always, thank you for listening. And remember, you and your dog are always enough, just as you are in your own life. Sending you loads of love. We want to see you next week for our next episode, but bye for now. That's it for today's episode. A massive thank you for tuning in. Don't forget to head over to the LWDG and sign up for our membership. Get access to expert-led training, a wonderfully supportive community, and the resources you need to become a confident and skilled gun dog trainer. Let's take this journey together, because no woman should have to train her gun dog alone. We'll see you all next week.